This is Luke Easter, and you're listening to Wild Man and Steve.
You are about to listen to the intersection of faith, talk, and music. The Wild Man and Steve show starts right now.
Breaking news. Breaking news. We interrupt this program to bring you, actually, we're not interrupting the program because we're just starting the program. So we're starting the program, Steve, tonight with breaking news.
Now, starting with breaking news?
Starting with breaking news. And the reason I'm telling you right now is because you didn't know this. You did not know this.
I never know anything that you're going to say. I mean, that is not breaking news. For me not to know something is not breaking news.
Well, okay, that's too easy to jump on, so I'm not going to go there. But I just need to tell you that just before we started the show tonight, I heard from my source.
Oh, your one source?
Yes, the unnamed source, the humble source. He does not want to divulge anything. He or she, I should say, does not want to divulge the identity and everything. But I did hear from the source, and this affects you too. This affects you too, Steve. Yes. So this is the breaking news. I heard from my source. Now, I didn't hear directly, but that the producers of the Wild Man and Steve show are planning on already starting contract negotiations for 2022.
You mean we might get a raise?
Well, I don't know. It's going to be up to the producers. Now, that's what the source told me. Right? So I don't know. Now, I'm assuming because of your reaction, you haven't been contacted yet, or maybe you won't tell me if you've been contacted about your contract or not. Yeah.
I've received nothing.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, he gives me a face like I received nothing at all. So, I just thought about that. Since our producers, Wild Man and Steve Enterprises, our 104th floor. You have your office, I have my office, and all of that. So I was just thinking before the show tonight, what would it be like if we go through these contract negotiations that our producers are doing? It's amazing. I didn't hear from the producer yet. I just heard from my source. Contract negotiations for 2022. And what would happen if one of us declined?
So in the history of rock and roll, all right, there have been people have left bands. Lead vocalists have left bands. Lead guitarists have left bands. Drummers have left. Yeah. Bassists have left. And you bring in somebody else. Now, sometimes the fans warm up to that and they will accept the new player and the new lineup. Sometimes they don't. So
what you're saying is it would be kind of like Eddie Van Halen and David Lee Roth. That's what we're looking at here.
I think, yeah. I mean, when David Lee Roth, left, and then Sammy Hagar, right, came in. Right. So some people, right. There's still people. There's still people that want Deep Purple to come back and do another reunion show with Richie Blackmore. At this point, though, Steve Morse has been the lead guitarist of Purple longer than Richie Blackmore was originally. But there are people who still think that Richie is the guitarist, for Deep Purple. So, there'd be people who could understand, if, for example, the show became, let's say you left and it became, the Crazy Bob and Steve show or the Maniac Mike and Steve show. But you do understand I ain't going nowhere.
Well, now, what would you say if I told you that from that same source, that there's some rumblings of the possibility of having the Steve Show.
You know what I'd tell those people? I'd tell them to tear that contract up. Because if I don't get to do this show with my buddy Wildman, then I ain't doing it.
Yeah, and you know how many times, as you said, VH1, all that, you know how many times statements like what you just said were made only to find out the next week the plan was already in place, right? So I'll tell you what we have to do, Steve. This is what we have to do, okay? We have to respect each other's decisions, respect each other's salaries for the show, because, you know, we're in this for the money, folks. I don't know if anybody knows that. I mean, if it wasn't for the money, we wouldn't be doing this. And so you talk to your agent and I'll talk to mine. Okay. We'll just
good.
We'll just work it that way.
Sounds good.
All right. But at the same time, I want all of our listeners right now, all of our followers, listeners, and fans, which we know there's a separation between those three: followers, listeners, and fans. If they can go to Twitter right now at Wildman and Steve, hashtag Wildman and Steve 2022. How many of you want to see that? How many of you out there want to see Wildman and Steve 2022?
I can tell you that's going to be, you put that out there, and when this episode comes out the next day, that's going to be trending on Twitter.
You know what? I think we need to call Jack in advance and say, you know what, you may want to get some extra server space, because this might just take it down. Yeah. You know, this might just take Twitter down. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
You know, that's just us being responsible for, you know, what we know about to do. You know, he has a right to know. He has a right to know. So hashtag Wildman and Steve 2022. Somebody please put it out there. So anyway, that's the end of the opening to the show. And everybody knows we've been trying our best to find the best way to open up a show, best way to open up a podcast. Rate us on that one, ladies and gentlemen, but with the hashtag Wildman and Steve 2022, and rate that opening from 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the best. Okay. And now this is the part of the show where we turn it over to what everybody knows as Mr. Segway, Mr. Steve Perkins himself, the Latin teacher, rock and metal enthusiast. Brian Duncan referred to him as quite the incongruity, and I will tell you, he is quite the incongruity. Mr. Segway always introduces our guests by doing what his name says. Mr. Segway, take it away.
So often you set me up for this, and I appreciate that, but I've got another piece of business I just want to run by you. If the Wildman and Steve show is unable to continue because of contract issues or whatnot, I've got an idea that's something else we might spin off. I just want you to think about this. Listen to me here. Everybody loves all the different Christian bands that are out there. Am I right or am I right? I mean, that's why our show's so popular.
Sure.
What would you think if you and I started a business that marketed, say, you know, like some of the logos, album art, stuff like that of different Christian bands, but on vegetables? And we could call our business ChristianBandVegetables.com. And so you could have like band logos carved into, I don't know, squash, gourds, you know, whatever, you name it, Christian Band Vegetables. I'm thinking major hit. What are your thoughts on that? Christian Band Vegetables.
I could see it as a kind of a spinoff of Veggie Tales and all of
that.
But you know,
you're picking up what I'm laying down, man.
Yeah, I got it. But quite honestly, I'd like something more beef based if possible. You know,
Christian Band Steaks.
There you go. ChristianBandSteaks.com.
It'd be like Omaha Steaks, right? So we deliver the steaks to your house, but with your favorite band logo seared into the meat.
Oh,
Christian Band Steaks.
There you go, Christian Band Steaks. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. That's where it's going to begin. And Mr. Segway strikes again, because the amazing guest we have with us tonight, if there's anybody who would have the ability to come up with and create Christian Band Steaks with the logos seared right into the meat, it is our guest, Anthony Gober from ChristianBandShirts.com. Anthony, welcome to the program. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. I love that idea too. I've got a barbecue this weekend. Thank you. I'm stealing it.
Dude, go with it. Go with it.
Just be sure to talk to Steve's agent about the copyright issue, but go ahead. You can yeah.
Hey, I actually have a lot of these logos, a lot of these images under contract.
Oh.
Under exclusive contract. So if Steve wants to steal it from me, good luck to him.
Here's what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to suggest a new product in your lineup. I mean, we're going to get into that in the show tonight. All the stuff that you offer such great merchandise, such a great variety of merchandise supporting Christian bands. How about, and you've seen these things, right? Some sort of kind of a brand that you can brand your steaks with. I mean, I've seen it for college teams and stuff like that. Could you imagine having, the Blood Good brand that you sear into your steak, or the Petra, whatever, right? Just awesome. Dude, I think that's an item you should have.
I'm going to look into that and see what it would take to do that. I like that idea.
Yeah, that sounds.
Dude, I will tell you this. I would buy that. I would absolutely buy that. Yeah.
And it wouldn't last long. It wouldn't last long if he bought it. No.
Hey, I know a few metal workers. Maybe. There you go.
Yeah.
So let's jump into this thing. So Anthony, we've gotten to know you a little bit because, first off, the online ChristianBandShirts.com, and the merch associated with the different bands, but then also you help design and market our own stuff, the Wild Man and Steve stuff. In fact, obviously this is a podcast. People are listening to audio, but we record by Zoom, and I'm wearing the Wild Man and Steve hat right now. I'm wearing our T-shirt.
My head's feeling a little naked right now. I mean,
you might need to get a Wild Man and Steve hat.
The head
so, we've loved working with you and appreciate your stuff. How did you get into marketing Christian band merchandise?
Actually, it's kind of a long story for me anyway. I've been working the Christian concert scene in Southern California for over 25 years, close to 30 years now. And someone I knew from that scene here locally in the Los Angeles area invited me to help her running merchandise at Cornerstone. This was back in 1995.
Okay.
And so I went and I was doing Steve Taylor's merchandise. Everyone knows Steve Taylor. He was on the main stage that year. His live album had just come out. And so I was the one handling his merch at Cornerstone in the merch tents. So I'm sitting there looking around and I'm seeing literally hundreds of booths. For those of you who've gone to Cornerstone, it was a huge event. You might have 20,000, 30,000 people there at any given day sometimes. So this particular Cornerstone, it was mid-90s. It was when it was at its peak, and there were literally hundreds of booths there. And I started looking around thinking, surely there's a way of doing this as a full-time store so that fans are always able to find their favorite band's shirts. I thought that there's got to be a way to do that. I tried doing it with a Christian music store I owned a few years later, but realized, inventory just killed me trying to, buy up these band shirts and have them available to sell. Move forward a few years later, and I own my own T-shirt line called The Wounded Society, and I was looking into print on demand so that I'm able to, instead of keeping a huge inventory of shirts, have them printed as they're being ordered. And this was about 2.5 years ago. And what I found out was print on demand costs the quality and the cost have reached a point where something like this is actually feasible. And so I shifted the Wounded Society's web store to being print on demand so that when people order, we just print it on demand and have the fulfillment company send it out. So I immediately went to work, with my own brand, negotiating terms so that these print on demand companies would give me the best rates possible, give me a good profit, right? Because let's be honest, it's a business. It's a ministry, but it's also a business. And if the money's not there, you can't keep working on it. And I got my costs lower than I expected, to be honest. I did not expect to negotiate them to the point that I did. And so I thought, hey, wait a minute. Why am I doing this just for myself? Mm-hmm. Why don't I extend this to some of the bands that I've worked with over the years and see what they think? So I floated an idea out on Facebook. What if there was a web store that you could find, t-shirts and other items for bands, all in one place? Because, bands do their own e-commerce.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's the traditional way. They get a whole lot of t-shirts printed up front, cost them a fortune, a small fortune to do it, and they hope they sell them.
Right.
And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But, it's a lot of out-of-pocket costs. They're having to go to the post office, deal with shipping, deal with any complaints if there's a problem in the print, all of those things. And that's not what a band is about. Let's be honest.
Right.
Sure.
Their job is to make music and minister to us through their music and their stage performance. Not, head to the post office every day so that we get their shirts. And so I just started going, okay, let's float this out there and see what kind of response it gets. Within an hour, I had close to 100 responses.
Wow.
And I'm going, okay, apparently I'm onto something. About a month later, I was a vendor at AudioFeed. I work with one of the tents that was there. And so I started talking to some of the bands there at AudioFeed, and this was in 2019, and got a good response. They loved the idea. The idea is the bands still get paid, because in my mind, this is the band's merchandise. If I make a couple of dollars on it because I've negotiated good enough pricing, and then I offer it to the band still below what they're finding at most anywhere else, mm-hmm. and put it in a store where people are coming for, say, blood good, and they also happen to find a Mortification shirt.
Yeah.
If you're talking classic bands in the same place, mm-hmm. that increases sales for the, every band, really.
Yeah.
And so I floated the idea with some of the bands, got a great response. So I got back home from AudioFeed that year, and I just went to work on it. We officially launched middle of July in 2019. So we're closing in on, what is it now? 25 months, 26 months, 27 months. Okay. We're closing in on 27 months since I launched this, and we're now well over 200 bands.
Wow.
That's the kind of response that we've gotten from the bands. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ourselves, sometimes the economy, let's be honest, our economy hasn't been great the last couple of years. We've done well. Mm-hmm. We've continued to grow. And so it was an idea whose time had come, and that vision God had put in my heart, back in 1995, I'm now getting to live that every day, because this has very quickly become my full-time job.
Well, you were saying, and I got to say, I think this is such a good thing. First off, I'm all about the print on demand, both for merchandise like that. Certainly in the book business, we've seen that come around big time with print on demand. It just makes sense. It makes total sense. You're not having to warehouse a bunch of physical items and all of the costs that goes into that. But what I like is that this is something, like you said, the bands don't need to really be doing this. Right. They're about making the music. That's what they do. Mm-hmm. And so they need this kind of support. And I think that's one of the things that we try to do on the show.
Yeah.
Whether it's interviewing classic artists, from the 70s, 80s, 90s, that kind of thing, but also the up and coming artists. We want to connect fans with artists, artists with fans, and everybody with Jesus. That's what we're about. And so the same thing, you're providing that as a way to support these bands. They can do what they got to do. But this is important. Fans want physical stuff. I mean, it's just part of the fun of rock and roll, right? We want the shirts. We all have that fantasy, and I don't know how many times it's ever actually played out. Right, we all have the fantasy of wearing our favorite band shirt out to the grocery store, and somebody's going to ask us about it. And I don't know that ever really ends up happening.
I've had it happen so many times, Steve. It's crazy how many times
I've had that happen. Right? We want that, and so I think that is such a good thing. Let me ask a quick question, and I know Wildman is burning to ask some stuff of you as well here, but you mentioned that you've catapulted up to 200 some bands now. At this point, obviously you're producing a good product. It's a good service to the bands. Are you finding now that bands are coming to you through maybe some word of mouth and some other bands who have said, hey, you need to go talk to Anthony. He's going to hook you up. Are you finding now that bands are coming to you?
My biggest source of bands coming to me and signing up is other bands.
There you go.
I've had fans who purchase things and then they said, I have my own band. I bought this from you. I really liked it. I've got my own band. Is there any way you could do our merch? And I'm going, that's what we do.
Awesome.
Wow. And then I've had record labels. I work with about 5 different record labels at this point, and they make referrals. Rocks Productions, Frontline Records, which was Intense, Alarma, and all of that way back in the day. I've got a few years of working with the current owner of Frontline, but Mice Music Group currently owns it, and I've worked with them a few times for some events I've done here locally. So I reached out to them. I work with No Life Till Metal with Scott Waters. I work with Raven Faith Records, Rottweiler Records, done a little bit with Sacrosanct, rest in peace, Tony. So I work with some of the labels as well. Ad Windblow Media has referred to several of their artists to me. So I'm getting both artists and the labels constantly referring other people to us. Sean Browning from Grave Robber is because he's in the horror punk scene, and we've recently launched a mainstream service that will work with some secular bands as an outreach ministry and provide the service to them as well. Mm-hmm. He's wanting to help refer other bands in the horror punk scene to working with us. That way, not only are they coming in contact with Sean and he's getting an opportunity to share Jesus with them, but they're coming in contact with me and seeing how I do business and, seeing that I glorify God with how I conduct business. To answer your question, Steve, absolutely. A lot of bands are referring other bands.
So if we could back up just for a moment, and we'll get into more of the specifics of what you're doing now. But if you could tell our listeners, what was it that got you into music in the first place? One of the things we've found on this show, and it's hard to articulate, it's hard to verbalize, is that music really brings us together. There's no question about it. So obviously you're a fan of what you're doing. This isn't something where I got to go to work every day. You're a fan of what you're doing. So talk to us about your favorite bands. What got you into being a fan in the first place?
Well, being in my mid 50s now, I'm an older guy, so I go back to the 80s. And I started getting into music, listening to Creedence Clearwater Revival, Elvis Presley, some of those bands when I was a kid, bands that my parents listened to. And through the 90s, I started listening to heavier stuff, a little bit on the lighter side of metal, if you will. Mm-hmm. Bands like Dokken, Scorpions, Ozzy, all of those bands. And I wasn't a Christian at the time. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. And in college, I started listening to Stryper. I'm like millions of other people. I first heard Stryper on MTV.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting in the lobby in the dorm, if I was in college, and the Calling on You video comes on, and I'm going, hey, this is actually pretty good. And I'm an old Styx fan, so obviously Mike's voice, Mike, I love you, but you do sound like Dennis DeYoung. Let's be honest. So I was like, man, I really like this. It's like Dennis DeYoung singing for a metal band, and so that's what, and I still wasn't a Christian at the time. That was what got me listening to a little bit of Christian music. I got the To Hell with the Devil album, started listening to it. The message got in. And less than a year later, I gave my life to the Lord.
Wow.
And one of the cool things is I've gotten to meet those guys. I've gotten to work with them, and that's kind of a cool thing. In fact, in 1986, 87, I saw them on MTV like everyone else. 10 years later, in 1997, I actually sat down with Robert and was doing the first ever official website for any of those guys.
Wow.
This was before Stryper.com came around.
Mm-hmm.
This was an AOL website that Robert and I put together. So it was kind of cool, seeing God move me from this dorm in San Angelo, Texas, where I went to college, and move me to the Los Angeles area where I'm seeing down with the same guy I was seeing on TV 10 years earlier.
Wow. Wow.
So it's been a blessed life for sure.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. We've heard your story often from people who have shared how much just hearing Stryper or a band similar just got the wheels turning, and then the next thing you know, you're following Christ, like you said, within a year. And if I could just pause for one moment and just say to all of our listeners and everybody listening, this is why we do what we do. And I know that's what Steve is thinking as well. We promote bands because we know that this is making a difference in people's lives. That Christian bands out there with their testimony, with their message, is making a huge difference in people's lives. It made one in mine. It made one in Steve's. It made one in Anthony's. Several of our listeners as well. And this is why we do what we do. And that's why you do what you do now. You're promoting bands through the ChristianBandShirts.com so that other people can hear the same message that you heard. And that's powerful. So if you could give us a outline or maybe the steps of the progression. So if somebody contacts you and they say, hey, we see what you do, how do we get started? What's the next step? Because we probably have some listeners who are really sitting on the edge of their seat now wondering, how does this work? And how much money do we have to put up? All of those questions that they're probably asking right now.
Absolutely. What I do is I tell them more about how we do business. Before I go into, hey, sign up on our website, I want them to know what it is we do. And tell them, I've spent some time setting up these accounts with print-on-demand fulfillment companies and have negotiated really great rates. I pass on the savings to you.
Yes.
There's never any out-of-pocket costs to get merchandise sold on our websites.
Absolutely. We can testify to that, folks. That's absolutely right on.
That's one of the things that I'm really adamant about. I don't want to charge setup costs. If we end up doing your design, if it's something major, we have to charge. I am a graphic artist, and so if it's something that I feel a need to charge for, I will. But minor edits on artwork we don't charge for, as you guys know. I've done some simple designs for you guys, and Steve, you're wearing one. Steve's wearing one that's Wild Man Steve, Blue Lightning logo. Look it up.
Yes.
So what we do is we set what we refer to as a base cost, and that base cost currently is $10.50, and I'm fighting with my vendors to keep it at that price, because with what we're seeing going on in the world, inflation is hitting double digits in some areas. And it's definitely in this area. For apparel, it's hitting double digits very quickly. But I've been able to so far keep it solid at 1050 so that I maximize the profits for the bands. So if, let's say, somebody pays, I'll use a Wild Man Steve shirt as your example. Somebody comes along, they pay, a fan listener comes along, they pay $17.99, which is our default pricing, if you will, on a t-shirt. I wanted to keep, it was important to me that we keep our default pricing. If they're going to let us decide how much to charge for the shirt, I want to keep that low to encourage more people to buy. That's simple economics. People buy what they can afford. So $17.99, and we'll price it at that. They pay us the $17.99. We take care of printing, shipping, customer service, everything. Then once a month, and you guys can attest to this, I send out reports for whoever sells the previous month. So we're seeing here it's the 12th. I just paid everyone last week, who had sales in September. And so what I'll do is I'll send them a report and, send them the money. And some of these bands, for example, Sacrament, we just launched Sacrament merch last week. One of our most requested bands, and we got them last month. I sent Sacrament over $400 last month for their sales.
Wow.
And one of the things that I'm also adamant about is integrity. If I tell you I'm going to pay you, I'm going to pay you. And I stick to that. And I invite people, if they want to audit what I say I'm doing, I will find a way to make that happen. I'm actually working on it already behind the scenes as something I can plug into my store so that all the bands can see the back end of it and see what our actual sales are. I want to be transparent that way. So basically, we set your merchandise up on different products. You choose the product. You tell us what price you want to put, which is you telling us what your profit will be. Then after that, you provide the artwork. We do the setup. We do the e-commerce, shipping, customer service, and send you the profit. And I dare you to go out and find another company doing what we do and still paying all the bands and at a lower price than what we do. I've checked out the competition, and right now we're beating anyone else's base price for a simple single-sided t-shirt by $1.50. And their service isn't what mine is.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. A band, and again, if anybody's listening who has a band or starting a band or been out there for a while and you just want somebody else to handle the merch for you think about it. You are out nothing up front. The way Anthony runs ChristianBandShirts.com, you're out nothing up front. The product is good, and if it sells, you get some money. What's not to like about that? And in terms of quality, I mean, I've had the particular shirt I'm wearing right now. I've worn it. I've had it through the washer and dryer, holding up great. Coffee mug is great. The hat that I'm wearing right now is great quality. In fact, the logo is stitched, is great. I've got a big Wild Man Steve poster hanging up in my garage. The paper quality of the poster was heavy. It was a good quality product. So talk to us a little bit about some of the products. So you guys obviously you can slap a label on or a logo on it. You can market it. So how have you decided what to come up with though in terms of items to offer bands? And kind of a parallel to that, do bands ever request items and say, hey, we want to also sell this item that maybe you don't? So how does that work for you?
Well, start out with, we thought band shirts. My original intent was just t-shirts, nothing but t-shirts. Then I thought, well, let's add hoodies to it. I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? And I started looking at what some of the different print providers were offering. And I thought, well, why not? Why not offer a larger selection? So I started adding to it constantly. I added mugs, the big metal tumblers, posters, mouse pads, pretty much anything that I thought of that, hey, I've seen bands do this. I can do stickers, the buttons, all of that, print on demand. And so I just started adding to it. I got a little crazy with it. I got to be honest. I got a little crazy, and I was trying to put every image on everything. Where somebody'd send me an image and I'd be putting it on 40, 50 items. And I realized this is taking too much time. At that point, I had like 2 different kinds of posters, multiple sizes of mugs, stationery. I was making that available, which is kind of cool at the same time. But it wasn't selling the way shirts. Believe it or not, coffee mugs. Coffee mugs are a good seller. Yeah. Shoes. I can get.
I will say that one blew me away because you got the high top.
High top sneakers.
And I was like,
kind of like Converse All Stars.
I was like, what's that? So people are really buying that.
Oh yeah, I sell 3 or 4 pair a month.
That's wild.
At least. And so I started looking at what sells consistently. And what sells consistently are obviously the t-shirts. That's our main seller. That can be up to 80% of our sales is the t-shirts. Hoodies, it's the season again. So hoodies, that's a mainstay. We're actually in the process of redoing all of the hoodies on the site. So people be patient with us because our original print provider for hoodies has decided to go out of business. That's the economy we're in. So I'm in the process of getting another provider for hoodies. Posters, big cloth tapestries.
So I've got a birthday coming up later this year, and I've got Christmas, right? And there's some stuff that old boy Steve would like of his own merch. So I'm hoping my family thinks I've been a good enough boy and get some of that. So no, I got one of the coffee mugs because I love drinking hot tea. And so I have that, yeah.
Well, these tumblers, they're stainless steel tumblers. You see them everywhere. You go to any Walmart, Target, they're there. But these are custom made with the band's logos on them. The quality is absolutely amazing. They're painted enamel. I mean, you can't find better quality. I'm going to just be blunt about it. I had one that got returned because it had been lost in the mail for 5 months. I had already replaced it at my cost. By the way, that's my thing, guys. If there's a problem, I take care of it. You guys don't have to.
Yeah.
I take care of it. So I'd already replaced it for being lost in the mail. And then 5 months later, it comes back. My wife sees it and goes, that's mine. And I'm going, okay. That was in April, 6 months ago. And I kid you not, she has drank from that thing every day for 6 months now. She uses it for cold instead of hot. She puts ice in it, leaves it out overnight, and there's still ice in it in the morning. It's that good a quality.
Wow.
If you get one of these 20-ounce stainless steel tumblers, I kid you not, you're just going to be blown away at the quality. The print quality is amazing. It's even on the side, it shows it more of a matte look, but they're actually glossy. They're just amazing, the quality. Those are pretty much the items that get the best response. Add to that patches, buttons, stickers. And so I decided to kind of simplify what I'm offering. Occasionally I probably sell 2 to 3 children's shirts a month. So I make that something that if there's a request, I'll set it up. No problem. But if not, then, let's be honest, not a lot of Mortification fans are wearing children's sizes these days. So,
well, and as we're talking here, I'm pulling up our site on our page on Christian Band Shirts and just kind of scrolling through even our merch. And there's just such a good variety, I think, from our perspective, and we would fall into the category of bands. Obviously, we're not a band, but people that have the merchandise.
You're music related, and that's why I work with you.
We love our product. We love the range of products. We helped us get a couple different designs going. So, hey, you want the T-shirt with this version of the logo, or a T-shirt with that version of the logo? So, a lot of good stuff out there. I want to circle back though to, and I'm glad, Wild Man, you were asking the question at that point, because quite frankly, I was getting misty. I was getting a little moist around the eyes there. When you were talking about the fact that as you listened to Stryper and came to Christ, and at the end of the day, I kept thinking about Paul, the Apostle Paul. Right? I become all things to all people, so that by all means I might save some. And I don't think there's any one of us three right now who cares whether somebody comes to Christ because of a sermon they heard, if they come because of a song they heard, if they come because of a Gideon's Bible they picked up in their hotel. Whatever the way you come to Christ is that you get to Jesus at the end of the day. That's what's really the thing. Have you come across any stories in terms of work, at an actual merch table or merch booth or stuff like that? Have you heard other stories as well of people who have really either come to Jesus for the first time or have grown in their faith because of Christian music?
I see that all the time, to be honest. As I've shared, I've been working with Christian music for somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 years. So I've literally gone to thousands of concerts, easily in the thousands. So I see that a lot, actually. I've had countless people tell me, I got saved at a Stryper concert, or I got saved at a Bloodgood show, or, here locally, Focused or Unashamed, some of those guys, some of the older Tooth and Nail bands. I'm always hearing that stuff, that people came to Christ through music, whatever genre they're listening to. Yeah. That seems to be half the people I know, to be honest.
Yeah.
I've had people tell me I got saved at Cornerstone. A friend drugged me to Cornerstone. I got saved there because Stryper was a local band, to where I am, being in the Los Angeles area. I come across people all the time saying I got saved because I caught one of the Bibles and read it, or I got invited to the Bible study that Oz Fox used to do in his house. Things like that I hear all the time. Wow. I mean, that's a constant for me.
Yeah.
Well, and listeners to this show, we're going to throw this out there for you. If you're listening to the podcast, hit pause right now and hit us with a tweet. Who remembers at what band's concert did the Wild Man get saved? If you're a fan of the Wild Man and Steve show, Wild Man has talked about this multiple times. So hit that out there on Twitter. If you remember at whose concert, what band's concert did our very own Wild Man get saved?
I'd like to hear this story sometime. I gotta be honest, guys. I don't listen that much because I'm always so busy. But I would like to hear that story.
Yeah. Well, Steve just put it up there, so I don't know if I should disclose the band. But
if they pause,
right. If our fans are honest, if they're honest,
post pause.
Well, I'll give you a general overview briefly, just a quick summary. I was raised in the church, and knew everything about how to be saved, how to be Christian, how to act saved at least, but it never really happened until I was 13, and I was at a concert, Christian metal concert, and that was only because that's what my parents would permit me to listen to. And at the end of the night, I remember the lead guitarist gets out his Bible and he does the altar call thing. This is after the encore. And he asks the question, he says, are you with Jesus every day, every Sunday? Are you in church with Jesus every Sunday? But when you leave the rest of the week, are you leaving him there? And man, that just stuck with me. And from somebody who grew up in the church, we always had altar calls. We always had revivals. My parents would take me down and they'd be crying and everything. The family would pray together. I hated those times, couldn't stand those times. And everybody's crying and praying. So I hated the altar call, hated that. But in this instance, I had no more control over my faculties. I just kind of stood up and just went forward because there was something supernatural happening. And I got a Bible and everything. And I came home and I told my parents about it, and they were so surprised. And the first thing they said was, we thought you already were. And that's what the amazingness about my story is, that it's easy to play the game and appear that way. So that's my high level summary. Outside of the recording, I can divulge more information.
Well, I was going to say, we're going to throw one little clue out there for our fans. Wildman, in addition to this band, whatever this band was, in addition to really being kind of masters of evangelism, would you say that this band they were kind of masters of the metal as well?
Yeah, they were master. There's no question. They were the supreme master of the metal. No question about it. Yeah.
All right, there's your clue. That's all you're getting, fans. That's all you're getting. That's the only clue you're going to get there.
Yeah. Well, Anthony, it's been great to hear you and hear your story and hear what you're doing. What you're doing just has the way of Jesus written all over it, because you're there to help others succeed in getting the gospel message out there. And we want to do everything we can to support you. And we've already talked about what bands can do if they want to utilize your services to get merch out there. What would you say if somebody's listening to this and say, man, I really appreciate what this guy's doing, how can I support that? What would be the answer?
Support the bands. I mean, there's a couple of things that I'm really passionate about. One is, I've been saying this on social media for years now, real fans don't buy bootleg merch. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of websites out there that are doing bootleg merch.
Amen.
Real fans support the bands.
Yep.
That's how I feel about it. I'm really passionate about this. God used music to reach me. I want to turn around and support the ministries that reach me. And this is, what God's called me to do, to help that. And so the first thing is, don't buy bootleg merch. Mm-hmm. Buy official merch so that you support the bands. Second, because again, the bands make most of the profits. I don't make much doing what I do because I do it for the kingdom, not for the dollar. Mm-hmm. So go to my website, christianbandshirts.com. Remember, it's something simple, christianbandshirts.com. Find a shirt you like. Share it on your social media. This summer, I put social media share icons on every product. So any product that you think is cool, share it to your social media and tell people why you think it's cool. Yeah. That's the best marketing, because we don't have a budget to pay for marketing.
Yep, sure.
So help the bands out by sharing their products on social media. That is the best way to support them. Buy it yourself and then share it with others. When you buy stuff, the video that you did, Steve, a few months ago was awesome. I gotta be honest. I loved it. But just post your purchases on social media and then put a link to where you bought it. While it's promoting my website, it's promoting the bands. Mm-hmm. That's for fans. That's the best way to support us. is buy from us because you're actually buying from the bands. It's not my merch, it's the band's merch.
Yeah.
Well, and then taking another step, by buying official merch, you're supporting the bands, and by supporting the bands, you are helping to promote the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
So it's that full chain there. And let's be honest, all the rock and roll folks, right? And honestly, whenever you want to date the beginning of rock and roll, but really rock and roll, it's always been word of mouth. It's always been underground, right? It's always been, hey, did you hear this new tape? Did you hear this new album? And this kind of stuff. So fans love doing that kind of thing, and we still do. It's just we do it in a different way in the 21st century, maybe through social media and whatnot. But absolutely. So yeah, share those pictures, promote that stuff out there.
Yeah. And that's exactly right, because you really are supporting the bands and the ministries that they're doing when you buy shirts through christianbandshirts.com, because we send them the profits. They get to use the profits for their ministry. I mean, how awesome is it that in what I'm doing now, I've got over 200 ministries that I'm partnered with to help support them in this way.
Yeah.
And that is how I see it. I'm a ministry partner with all these different ministries, literally all over the world. We've got bands in South America, in Europe, in Asia. We've got bands everywhere, and we're partnering with their ministry and helping support them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this is what you do. If you're a band out there looking for merch, go to christianbandshirts.com and you can message Anthony right through the site. It'll pop up and you can message him right there. And fans out there, as he said, to support your band, go to christianbandshirts.com, search for your band. And chances are, if you're listening to our show, you will find merch from your band that you like, and buy it, share it on social media. Keep these bands going, because that's the most important thing, is to keep the message going out there. So quickly, right before we head out here, Anthony, I always do, well, I don't say always, but recently I've been doing a lot of on-the-spot questions with our guests, on the spot that you're not prepared for, okay?
Should I be nervous?
Yes, now this is what everybody's waiting for. All the listeners have been waiting for this moment. They've been listening up until now. Like, when's the on-the-spot going to happen? So here it is. Anthony Gober, you're on a deserted island, and you can only listen to one CD. Who's it going to be?
Oh, gosh. You're really going after me on this one, because I don't want to offend any of my friends.
I knew that. I do.
I have been in this industry for a long time, and I've worked with a lot of different bands over the years.
Yeah.
But currently, and I can't even say, I don't even know which album I would pick, but I've been listening more to Impending Doom.
Oh,
okay. My taste has progressed over the years, and I love Impending Doom. And I probably listen to them as much or more than anyone else right now.
Wow.
It doesn't mean I don't like any of the other bands anymore. But if you ask me right now who I would choose, I would go for, but I would be torn on which album though. That's the catch, is I would be torn on which album, and I don't know. I mean, I'm sitting here looking up which albums that have which songs and going, okay, and see, they're working on a new one. I've already heard a couple of songs, and those were amazing songs. So,
well, yeah, it is interesting. Your tastes do change over the years. Like Wildman right now listens to a lot of Debbie Gibson. So,
yeah, I think I would have to go old school with Impending Doom though, and go with Baptized in Filth.
Okay.
Because Murderer is one of my favorite songs and has been for a long time now.
Okay.
So yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go with Baptized in Filth.
Well, great. And I apologize for putting you on the spot in that case of offending the ones that you work with. But ladies and gentlemen, you heard how hard it was for him to even say it. And also said that doesn't mean he doesn't appreciate or like all the other bands that he works with. So keep that in mind, folks. He's there for you. One more on the spot question before you go. This one's tougher. This is tougher. Okay. One more. Are you ready? Whopper or Big Mac?
Whopper.
All right. Case closed, right, folks?
Yes.
Right answer. That is the right answer. Absolutely.
Who wants 3 slices of bread on your burger?
Absolutely. Just had a Whopper the other day with my son. Whopper all
my, I tell you.
Bring the beef.
I'm always with those questions, Steve. I always get outnumbered. I'm telling you. You know, I like the Whopper. I love the Whopper. Yes, but if you gave me the choice, man, that special sauce, I just can't do with
Big Mac attack. Okay.
Yeah.
So see, if you were out here, I get outnumbered because everybody out in California, it's all about In-N-Out.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
I am.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I know that you're Christian owned and everything, but I just can't get into In-N-Out.
Ooh.
They have the special sauce, though. Oh. They do have that same sauce, but I just.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, so much for In-N-Out sponsoring ChristianBandShirts.com.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thank you, Anthony. This has been great. Ladies and gentlemen, ChristianBandShirts.com. Go there. You will find what you need to support your band, and you will find what you need for your own personal band as well. Thank you, Anthony, for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
If ever there was an example of servanthood, it is Anthony Gober of Christian Band Shirts. His desire is to help and promote bands that are sharing the gospel message without being financially burdened. He shared his story of how he came to Christ because of Stryper. I came to Christ also because of Christian heavy metal. We all need to understand when we find Christ, that is just the beginning, because in the same way God used others to bring us to Him, our desire then becomes to see others become a Jesus follower as well. Jesus said, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord to send out workers into His harvest field." May we be the workers He needs today. The Wild Man and Steve Show is now partnering with New Release Today. Find out more about them at newreleasetoday.com. And don't forget to check out our website, where you can also leave us a review at wildmanandsteve.com. Thank you for listening, everybody, and we will see you next time.